Okay, welcome to episode 2 of Dad versus Daughter. Now it's my turn, I get to choose. I'll be honest with you, it's 3 a.m. She's very tired. I've been drinking a little. I have the theory that being tired is a much bigger handicap than being drunk. And so I feel like I might have lost that first one, so I'm going to go with one that's a guaranteed win for me, which is the 5 most influential people who have walked the face of the earth. And it was actually your suggestion that we're taking, but I feel like I've walked the earth more than twice as long as you, and I have a huge advantage. And so here we go. But it's my choice. So you get to start at number 5.
Oh, I get to start. Great. All right. Well, number 5 might be a little bit biased since I am a musician, but I'm going to go with Beethoven. You know, music is something that ties all cultures and societies in the world together, automatically important. Beethoven was the most important musician slash composer. Uh, Part of the reason for that is because he expanded the size of the orchestra. You know, the full orchestra setting that we have today, that was created by Beethoven. And, you know, his genius was so big it could not be contained in the musical setting they were using of the day. So that is one thing. The other thing is that, this is probably the most important point, before Beethoven, music was just used to kind of accompany like theatrical productions. And after Beethoven, he made music such a primary art form. People like go to concerts for the purpose of listening to music, and that's like not something that happened before Beethoven. Also, side note, he made the piano like the most important instrument, and that was not the case for Beethoven.
Okay, I think that's good. Beethoven, I'll grant, most important musician of all time. I don't think that necessarily makes him number 5. I am going to, it's my category, so it's my rules.
What?
Yeah, that's right. My
Okay.
rules. And so I'm going to do a joint entry at number 5 and number 4 because I had to decide these congruently. So I'm going to go with number 5 as Buddha and number 4 as Jesus of Nazareth.
Jesus has 4. Okay. Wonder what your top 3 will be. But
Okay,
continue.
well, hold on. Now, maybe I should have said Jesus Christ as opposed to Jesus of Nazareth, but let me explain where I'm going here. Buddha is, obviously, there's less Buddhists than Christians.
Fewer Buddhists.
All right, fewer college girl, fewer Buddhists than there is Christians.
Then there are Christians.
Oh, man. So, that's a factor. I do want to say I considered putting Buddha ahead because I feel like if all of the world's religious creators came back today and were informed about what their adherents had done and said in their name, Buddha would be the one less likely to be like, whoa, because like Buddhism has the most pacifist element of any religion, and Buddha obviously was a pacifist. Buddha's theory, as I understand it, was basically like when humans were first created, it was very necessary to be a selfish dick.
Can we say that on YouTube?
Well, we're about to find out. This video might get banned. A selfish D. And Buddha became enlightened, like literally became enlightened. He's like, hey, everybody, I get it. You didn't want to get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger or clubbed by a Neanderthal, but now, we're kind of working things out. I think the reason everybody's unhappy is because they're being selfish deities. And maybe if you guys stop being so selfish, and you would achieve nirvana and be on the eightfold path. And I'm realizing instantly that I did not research what that eightfold path is, but I know it's like right mind and right body and right cable system or whatever he had going on at the time. And I think like what Buddha was saying was, you guys are kind of pretending your life is great on Facebook, but
That's probably what Buddha said.
maybe what you should do is just be way cooler to everybody, and then that alone would make you happier. And so what happened with Buddhism was it spread because people just thought it was a good idea. It wasn't like the European conquest of Christianity. There was nothing similar to that in Buddhism. So I feel like Buddhists are more a reflection of Buddha than Christians are, and I'm a Christian myself, of Jesus. That being said, I have to put Jesus ahead of him because there's 300, I don't have the internet access, but 300 or 400 billion Buddhists, and there's 2 billion Christians. And Christians in general, Christian nations have played a larger role on the world stage. And even though a lot of people complain that a lot of things that have been done and said in Jesus' name he would not have approved of, this is about influence. And so if it wasn't for Jesus, there would be no Christianity. So Buddha 4, Buddha 5, Jesus 4.
All right, fair enough. Again, wondering what your top 3 are, but we'll move on. My number 4 one, I'm looking at my notes a little bit because it is 3 a.m. My number 4 is Gutenberg. Gutenberg, a lot of people put him as the most important person of the last millennium for inventing the printing press with movable type. And he didn't actually invent the printing press, but the printing press, movable type combo, he basically made it so that books could be mass produced. And right now, we're sitting in a library with tons of books. By the way, courtesy,
Thousands. Yeah.
lots of books. Courtesy Luann. Thank you, Luann,
Thank
for
you,
letting us
Luann.
use your beautiful house.
Yes.
We love you so much. Anyway, books are so important. That goes without saying. Gutenberg made that important. Number 4, done.
Okay. I'll give you Gutenberg. He had a big head start. Somebody had already invented paper. But you're right, nobody had
Right.
mass-produced books before Gutenberg, and obviously that did change the plan. I'll give you that. Gutenberg, not on my list. Number 3, I am going to go with Muhammad. Now, before all my Irish Catholic family, who is all from Boston, kills me, I'm not saying that Islam is more important than Christianity. We're not judging religions here or anything like that. We're just talking about influence. That's right.
Of the person.
That's right. The difference between Muhammad and Jesus is that there is a finite amount of influence, although it's very large, of both Islam and Christianity. When Jesus died, there weren't a lot of Christians. In fact, Jesus was a Jew. Most of his followers were born as Jews. The Christians that remained at his death were very influential and were able to start the process of creating it. But Muhammad was very different. Muhammad created Islam and he spread it personally. He started the Arab conquest. He personally, when he completed the conquest of a country, they became Muslims immediately, which was the call at the time. And he also, the difference between the Quran and the Bible, I think, is key. St. Paul wrote most of the New Testament, which is what we read every Sunday in the Bible, and so you obviously have to give him influence. You have to give Constantine influence. If Constantine had not converted to Christianity, there's no telling how large Christianity would be as a religion today. So I sort of feel like Muhammad is like Jesus and St. Paul and Constantine and like Pope Urban, who spread Christianity through the Crusades. For better or worse, Muhammad kind of combined all those things, and so I have to rank him in front of Jesus. I'm sorry to all my Boston relatives.
All right, well, we'll come back to that one.
Okay.
Number 3 is that we're on?
Yeah.
All right. My number 3 is Isaac Newton. Most important scientist. Our lives would be so different if Isaac Newton hadn't. lived, there's no reason to think that anyone after him could have done all the amazing stuff he did, inventions, everything. I mean, it's just, I don't really know what else I need to say about him. Albert Einstein, rather, is the more famous scientist, probably.
No doubt.
Yeah, more famous.
This isn't fame.
I don't even think he would be important if there was.
No, I'm going to give you a directed verdict on that, which my lawyer mom and stepfather will love. Most important scientist of all time, Isaac Newton. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm done then.
Okay.
Number 3.
Number 2, I'm going to go with Augustus Caesar. Obviously, he's not even the most important person, most famous person in his family, but like Kira said, we're talking about influence, not fame. Julius Caesar, much more famous. But Augustus Caesar, we live in a world where every person that is born under in an incredible technological world, as you just stated, and a certain kind of government. Now, there's a lot of different religions and forms of government, but the structure of the government in all first world countries is the same, and it's the structure that Augustus created. He created the most important empire that's ever been in existence, which is the Roman Empire, and he led it for 40 years, which makes him automatically a more important figure than George Washington, for instance, who created the second most important empire in history. So that was important. Now, there were a lot of cultures that still have influence on society today. Jewish culture, Greek, Hellenistic culture, Babylonian, Egyptian, or whatever. But the only reason those cultures are important is because they were part of Augustus's empire, and he spent most of his time in his province, and he would bring those cultures back. And the only cultures that lasted were the cultures that he brought to Rome and felt were important in terms of architecture and literature and plays and everything. And so that's why he's the most important cultural figure, even over Shakespeare or Beethoven of our time. But in addition to that, he was smart enough to create a government. Hey, you guys poop and pee over there. Stay over there. This is where our water is going to be. That's going to be healthier. Hey, we need to make money, so these roads need to be better. Hey, we need to be nicer to the Jews and the Christians because they're kind of being cool and they're an income source. A lot of the things in terms of foreign policy and domestic policy, almost everything that exists in every government, first world government in the world today, Augustus Caesar created, second most influential person of all time.
All right. My number 2 and number 1 I'm going to clump together because you said that was a rule. Has to apply to both of us.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm going to do actually number 2 is Muhammad, number 1 is Jesus. And I don't need to explain their importance because you already did that, already did most of the argument for me. All I'm going to say about that is that, Christianity and Islam, 2 biggest religions in the world, and if you're a person that's religious, religion plays a really big part in your life. However, I'm going to put Jesus ahead of Muhammad because, 1, there are a lot more Christians in the world than there are Muslims, so influencing more people, more influential. Also, Christian nations have played a much bigger part on the world stage, since, Jesus started Christianity than Muslim nations have. So not a comment on the religions themselves, just which has had the most influence, and obviously there would not be Christianity if it weren't for Jesus. So
okay, well let me interrupt you because this is an absolute must-win for me.
Yeah.
Here's my one argument against what you said. The things that Jesus said, a lot of them that we do follow as Christians are things that Confucius had said, that were present in old Hindu texts, that obviously Buddha believed. The revolutionary things that Jesus said like don't just love your neighbor as you love yourself. That existed. The golden rule existed before. Jesus said, love your enemy as you love your neighbor. And that was incredible. I grant you. But we don't do that. I mean, no, not number one. We don't do that. I don't ever do that. Like if you're my enemy.
Well, you're a bad Christian then.
Okay,
not my fault.
That's fine, but most of us are bad Christians. What I'm saying is like if you're my enemy, I want to beat your ass. And like,
are we allowed to say that on YouTube also?
Let me just say what the reality is. Over history, we've like tried to kill our enemies. If in fact the 2 billion Christians in the world were like, you know what? Jesus said that we should love our enemies as my friends, he would be number one. He's not number one. Let me tell you who is number one. It's Isaac Newton.
All right.
She had him at number 3. Isaac Newton, I agreed with her. It's the most important scientist, but let me add a point. I get it. Time, when Jesus was born, that's when the calendar started. So there's the implication he's the most important. But Newton was born in 1642. The way people lived 1,642 years before Jesus and 1,642 years after Jesus was not that drastically different. But the way that we live now in the 300 or 400 years or whatever it's been since Newton was alive is drastically different. Every aspect of our lives is completely different. And that's because of Newton. He invented the scientific theory. There were important inventions before Newton, but Newton understood how things moved and mechanics and the scientific theory. And he said, hey, listen, if you want to invent things, if you want to make technological advances, this is how you do it. So every single scientist that has done anything important after Newton, particularly in macro science, owes a huge debt of gratitude instead of Newton. Einstein, there's no Einstein without Newton. Our everyday lives, every hour of our lives is much more transformed by Isaac Newton than any other human who's ever walked the face of the earth. And so he is number one by a large margin. It's not even a close call. Vote for Dad on this one.
Dad is a Christian, and there would be no Christians if it weren't for Jesus. Number one. All right, thank you guys for tuning in. Thanks for watching.